everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Nicci Chats 2. So this is a weekly show that I do with various experts where I interview them to give people a different perspective, because that is my mission in life, is to change people's perspective and to give them insights into things that they never thought about. So for those of you who don't know me, I run a company called The Why Effect, and I work with businesses to help them change their perspective, particularly around sustainability, looking at SDGs, and balancing people, profit, and planet. So today, my guest is Caron Cloete. I'm very excited to have her with me today because her and I initially connected over a video that I shared about burnout that was a while ago. And then we had a really interesting conversation, well, as interesting a conversation as one can have via LinkedIn comments, around micromanagement, where I had made a comment about something and she responded, and I just thought it was a really interesting perspective and a really interesting insight. And I wanted to bring her on to have a further discussion. So I'm very delighted to have her here today. So Caron, thanks for being here and welcome.
Thanks very much, Nicci. I'm very honored and excited to be here too. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. So Caron is a clarity and growth coach, which I also found, wow, that's so cool. I just love that title. But what I'm really, really interested in, before we get into the kind of deeper stuff around getting clarity and that sort of thing, Caron, how did you end up here? Because you've had quite an interesting career history by the looks of things.
Yeah, thanks, Nicci, and hi to everybody else as well. It's great to be here. So I started off many, many years ago having an argument with my dad about what I was going to to study at university. He said do a BCom. I said I wanted to be a teacher. And then through a series of incidences, I ended up in casinos where all I did was be the teacher in whichever role I played. But then when I did my degree, I did a BCom. So I probably should have listened to my dad all those years before. But yes, it's been an interesting journey. And then obviously working in casinos for 30 odd years. In the cash desk, dealing with lots of money and lots of people, but having the free reign to do the strategy and do the project management as we change systems and work in an amazing organization that allowed for so much growth. It just made it an amazing career. And then in about 2008, I decided I should probably do something. I needed to start a side hustle. I needed to do and do something that just filled my soul, and coaching seemed like the right thing. And again, by a series of coincidences, I got into a course with Min McLaughlin on neuro-linguistic programming. And I went down to Cape Town for 2 weeks. It was the most amazing experience to be learning all these new techniques that help people change without creating more trauma, and easy and effortless ways to use language to make people or help people to see things from a different perspective was just up my street, because I loved English as a scholar. And so now we're using language in all these different ways. And so it was great fun. And I've used the NLP all the way through my working career. But
sorry, can you just give us a very brief sort of overview of what NLP is?
Okay. Neuro as in brain, linguistic and as in language. So it's changing the brain as and it's more changing the way we use our brains, changing the way we think through language. And then neuro-linguistic programming is just the processes that we use to help you to change the way you see a situation, deal with procrastination. Tony Robbins uses a lot of NLP as well. He's I think Mel Robbins does as well. They use it superbly on those big stages. But in a one-to-one conversation, it's just about looking at the NLP communication model says that, and we all know this, they just put it in a diagram. You see something, it goes into your head, and you run it through your beliefs, through your values, through things that have happened before, and through what they call meta programs. And through that, you distort, you delete, and you generalize, because you can't deal with everything. So we sort of give it an overview, and then we make a decision about that. Is this good or is it bad? If it's good, our physiology and our mood is great. If it is bad, then we'll get angry, we'll ruminate, we will, and so we, and everybody does that. But with NLP, you're able to short circuit some of those ruminations and not change beliefs, but examine beliefs and say, how's this serving you? And then decide possibly to have a different approach or a different viewpoint, or but it's an easy way to affect change without trauma, which is great.
Oh wow, okay, very interesting. Thank you. Sorry, continue. So you did your NLP course, and then
and then COVID hit us, as it did so many other people, and I ended up getting retrenched. And since 2008, I'd been saying, I need to start my coaching practice. I need to start my coaching practice. And of course I didn't, because it was, the golden handcuffs. Life was easy. I knew what I was doing in corporate. It was very comfortable. And so COVID was a blessing. I'm going to talk a little bit later, if we get to it, to barriers, blessings and the barriers. And so all my barriers were taken away, and I started coaching, my coaching practice, which I call Sublime Edition. And Sublime is the absolute very best form of yourself. In chemistry, it talks about going from a solid state into a gas. It never goes through the liquid. So it's like this phenomenal change into something very different. And it's just changing form, not what it is intrinsically. So I just love it. So, and I think everybody needs to be the very best form of their self, and that's going to change over your life as well. We never stay static, so we're always changing and just bringing out the very best parts of us and recognizing the very best parts of us, because as human beings, we judge so harshly and we don't see the beauty and the perfection that is in us.
Oh, I love that. And I love your description of Sublime, because, I mean, actually not having done much chemistry myself, obviously I knew about it from a state of being, but it's really interesting that it's something that changes form without fundamentally changing. I love that. And I love that people can go on that journey. So one of the things that you do is around helping people gain clarity. And this is something that I particularly liked about your profile, because, I mean, as you said, in your own journey, you found yourself in the situation where you didn't really have a choice. You had to make a decision and follow your passion. But prior to that, you knew what your passion was, which can be very unusual. I've done a lot of work in the entrepreneurship space, and I'm sure you have people asking you this question all the time, where I have people saying to me, I want to leave my job. I'm tired of corporate. I want to have more meaning in my life. I want to have more purpose. I want to spend more time with my family, whatever the case may be. But I don't know what to do. And when I say to them, well, what do you love? A lot of the time, I mean, obviously I'm coming at this from a business perspective. A lot of the time they don't know. So that was why I was really, and I mean, it's a process that I've been through as well, where I've looked at my company and gone, I don't necessarily like what I'm offering, but how do I change this? So tell me, and this is where the little sort of workshop bit comes into it. What process do you take people through to help them gain clarity?
Okay, yeah. So whether we're aware of it or not, we have certain things that we are passionate about. The other day I was thinking to myself, I have no interesting hobbies. And then I thought, I collect glass, I collect music boxes, I love to be in the bush, I love to bird. And all of a sudden, from this place of closed down and not really acknowledging everything, I started thinking, okay, well, yes, there are actually a few things. I love stained glass. I've done stained glass as a craft before. So there's, and as human beings, we tend to do that. We tend to focus on what is comfortable and what is currently in our field of vision. And we spend so much time rushing and running, we don't sit back and just reflect on what we are really good at. And for somebody who maybe does sewing or knitting, maybe they can't make that a business, but there will be ways that they can they can do it to do some sort of income, but it won't be their primary source. So if that's not their primary source, then what else? And the whole idea with gaining clarity is, first of all, to get the coachee or the client to open up their perspective and say, and so to keep on asking, and what else, and why is that important, and what else, and why is that important. And they may not get to something immediately, but over time, just being aware of opening up your perspective and thinking about where things are, where what attracts your interest. It may be something that you've never ever done before, but you've thought, I wonder. That's enough to start exploring and saying, is this something I want to go through? One of the things that I tend to work with first, before we go into what I might want to do as an entrepreneur, is look at all the things that you've always wanted to do. Be it travel, or be it doing something, or be it trying a new skill, that sort of thing. Because we have so much that we want to do, but we repress it because there's life and family and making money and keeping body and soul together. And when you start looking at those things, you start actually seeing a little synchronicity and where the values are coming through. And so if you like beauty, for argument's sake, maybe you need to do drop shipping on a certain beauty product. Find, it might not be directly what you want. There might be other avenues that you can explore that could be useful for you.
Okay. And how would you recommend that people go through this process? Do you find journaling? I mean, I'm a very prolific journaler. I write a lot. I do love writing. I always have. But I know that's not necessarily everybody's inclination, because I would imagine that the best way to go through this process would not necessarily be in a 1-hour session, or this is a process that could take weeks or even months to go through. How do you recommend people, once we've looked at this, and so we've stripped away all the barriers, the expectations, the financial requirements, all of those sort of things, and we're now at a point where we are digging deep into these questions, how would you suggest somebody kicks off this process of asking these questions?
I love the way you talk about journaling and how it really fills your soul. And for some people, it's like, oh, if I have to write down something, don't make me do it, and don't make me read. So I think each person is going to have a different approach to it. Okay. What I do, I have you will see on my LinkedIn profile, I do a free workshop to allow people to do a very simple process. I love the process that I've started working on and working through and seeing the results. And it is oh yes, I do it all the time, and now I can't remember it.
Don't worry, it happens too. It's like when somebody says to you, who are your clients? And all of a sudden it's like, Can't think of a single one.
Yeah, so sorry. Dream. So dream, decide, take courage, and then act. And I do a very shortened version of that in a free workshop that I run.
Mm,
Then that actually is the foundation for a 3-month workshop that I run weekly. It's generally group coaching, and what I find works in that scenario is that as a coach never has all the answers. The coach is
mm,
there to work with the client for them and to ask the questions which will get the client to get to the right answer. And the client might be sitting there saying, I don't know, that's why I'm coming to you. Can't you just tell me? but at the end of the day, when you gain those insights yourself, the learning is stronger, it's more embedded, and the
mm,
motivation, that intrinsic motivation that you have, is just, it's so much more powerful. So the in the and in group workshops, everybody might be working on totally different goals, but the underlying principles and the underlying processes are the same.
mm,
So what are your values? How do they feed into what you're doing? What are the beliefs you have? How are they creating barriers, and how are they motivating you? Where are your sticking points? Why are you getting to that sticking point at that particular point? And everybody
mm,
goes through
mm,
relatively similar processes. So over the 12 weeks, we're dealing with all of those things. And you'll hear somebody else going, I really had such good intentions to um, follow my sales process and make sure that I had a very big opening at the top of my funnel, sorry. And I just didn't get to it.
mm,
And then being able to chat around that, and guaranteed, if one person opens up about that, somebody else will go, yeah, I can relate. And it's that
mm,
feeling. Entrepreneurship, it's in itself is a very lonely journey. So understanding that other people are dealing with what you're dealing with in different circumstances is, or in different ways, that is in itself is empowering. I do have a year program as well, which then it goes down to once a month coaching.
okay.
And in the 3-month uh, set that I have, there is some individual coaching. As we go into the 1 year, there's a little bit more
Mm,
individual coaching, because then things become quite diverse. Um,
mm, mm,
but the idea of going through it with somebody or in a group is that you can never ever see yourself clearly. Every time that I don't sit down to work on that sales funnel, I have very logical reasons for doing so. I mean, otherwise I would just sit down and do it.
exactly.
Yeah, but when your coach comes and they challenge that in a safe space, in a place where there's no judgment, but
Mm,
there's the curiosity of having a unique perspective, it makes a big difference. Um, the other thing that a lot of people do is say, I need to, I know when I retire, I want to do something. But it was Warren Kearns from Insaka the other day. Excuse my kitty cat here.
that's
Um,
okay. It's a welcome.
Warren Kearns from Insaka business platform the other day was saying, if you start today, you and somebody else only starts in 6 months' time, you are 6 months ahead of that person if you start today. And I know from my experience that I should have started my coaching when I did my first NLP course, but I was going, well, I don't have enough experience, and
Mm,
I don't have enough time, and you know, I've got so many other responsibilities and putting other people before myself. And I know now, I mean, hindsight is always 2020, that if I'd started then and had just one client a month, or
mm,
just done something small, I would be way ahead now than further way ahead now than where I am. And so one of my big things is anybody who feels they've got this urge to be entrepreneurial or to start something, and they're thinking, oh, there's so many people and I don't know if it's going to work. You don't know until you do it, and do it early, because that is what's going to get you ahead of the pack. So
Mm.
um, it's an amazing, well, it's sadly I'm not going to take advantage of that learning, but I certainly hope other people listening to this will go, who've got that little thought in the back of their mind, who are always
Mm.
saying, I'll get to it one day. Make the time now. You are important, and if you do this now for you, it can be a passive income in 2 years or 3 years. And yes, that might seem like a long time and a lot of work, but when that passive income is there, you're empowered. You have so much more freedom.
I think that's wonderful, and there are a lot of things that you've said that I'm really, really, I mean, that I want to touch on and dig a little bit deeper
Mm-hmm.
into. So, I mean, I love this process of dream, decide, take courage, and then act. I think that's wonderful, and I think it's something that. So, if anybody is interested in the workshops, please connect with Caron on LinkedIn. But it's also something that I personally also prefer working in groups, because that balance of group and individual, because I've often had insights myself from what other people have said. You know, somebody says something and you suddenly think, wow, I have the same thing, but I never thought about it. So there is that connection. And I mean, I'm obviously very extroverted, so I do enjoy being in groups of people. I know that doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but this is a process that I can go through on my own if need be, and just work through it and dig into this. We've got the Easter weekend coming up, so it's a great time to have some downtime and reflect and work through these things. But I also love what you say about starting things sooner rather than later, because I think there's a lot of value in. Somebody said to me the other day, you have to go small to go big. And it was such a beautiful expression, because you know, we often have, and I know it's something I tend to do, you know, it has to be big, it has to be huge. I have to leave my job and I need to earn a certain income. So I have to, and what I've found is that when I've done things without having the pressure, so if you start coaching on the side while you've still got a corporate job, there's no pressure to earn an income. So if you try it and it actually fails, well, does it really matter? It might be a knock to you. Yes, you might have to rethink things. You might have to go back and relook your client base or relook your skills. But you're not going, oh my God, my family are going to lose their house because this failed.
The other thing that I like, or that I like to change in that scenario that you're posing, is if you do some coaching and you go through four or five sessions with somebody, and you're sitting there thinking, I've got this huge imposter syndrome and I don't know if I really helped that person. It's not, you've got learning from that. So did it fail, or did it just not work the way you expected it to?
Yes, I
And
love
that's
that.
what I love about NLP is there's there's no such thing as failure. They also say it's never too late to have a happy childhood, which we can go into at some point. But that whole thing of, as you say, there's no pressure, but now you've got more insight. You can say, well, how would I do it differently? What did I learn from that? What's the next person that I get? What would I what difference do I want to make if I didn't think I made a difference for this person? Part of my LinkedIn sales process is just connecting with people, which is how I got to you and so many other amazing people. But the one thing that I learned, I was doing something and I wasn't concentrating, and I ended up connecting with a lot of people who had looking for work on their profile. And so it took me down a totally different pathway with people who had very different needs to the type of people that I'm looking to work with. You know, so they were still motivated, they were still career women, but they had a different they're in a different place to somebody who's in a job and who's looking for a promotion or who's looking to start a side hustle. Because if they don't get a job, their family is going to suffer. And so I found us having very different conversations, and wow, I learned so much. But it took me away from my primary focus, which is coaching people and creating a coaching practice which is going to earn an income for me. And now I know that I will always deal with a certain percentage of women who are looking for work and who are dealing with those particular problems, in the knowledge that it's not going to be an income earning portion of my business, but it's part of what I'm going to do to give back. So, but I wouldn't have realized that unless I made the mistake and gone down that road. So, you know, I could sit here and go, well, I should have started my coaching practice in 2008, and be beating myself up and saying, oh, you know, why did you not see it? But the reality is, that's how it happens. So now, how do I build on that? How do I take a positive approach? How do I see the alternative perspective and say, right, life's given me lemons. How do I make lemonade? Where do I find the sugar? and that, with everything in life, in everything that we do, the situation is always just the situation. For a for somebody who I have family who train dogs, and they are particularly harsh with their dogs, and my side of the family rescues dogs and is foster moms and works at shelters and stuff like that. So when you see somebody being particularly harsh with a dog, somebody who comes from a dog training perspective would say, that's right, because the dog needs to learn the discipline. Whereas somebody who comes from my perspective has a whole lot of emotions involved. And I go, no, that's cruel. It shouldn't be like that. Our opinions are our opinions, but they don't change the situation. How we act on those opinions or those thoughts or those feelings will result in a different outcome. But and when we get into difficulties, just having a look at it from a bird's eye view and getting a perspective which is going to empower you and draw you forward is what you want. And that's a type of resilience. And as you say, in a group coaching scenario, you get that. You don't have to sit there and bare your soul if you're an introvert. You can just listen to what people are saying, and you can take the learnings, you can then use that to take yourself forward. So every time something doesn't work out the way you wanted it to, it can either be an end of the road or the bend in the road, and I like it just to be a bend.
Yeah, I love that. There's actually a beautiful book, sorry, excuse me, that I don't know if you've ever come across it. It's called The Midnight Library.
No.
And it was a book that it literally changed my life. And it starts off with this girl who feels like her life is completely pointless. And she actually decides to commit suicide. And she does, but she goes into almost this transition state. And she finds herself in this library with all these books. And the books are effectively all of the different lives that she could have potentially lived.
Yeah.
So, for instance, she was an amazing swimmer and she actually stopped swimming. So in one of her lives, she doesn't stop swimming. She carries on and ends up being an Olympic swimmer. She was a very talented musician. So in another one of her lives, she stayed with her band and she became a very successful singer. But it was in all of these lives that she ends up in, all of her different choices had pros and cons. So that's why I find it so interesting when you say you should have started coaching in 2008. It's how would your life have been different if you had it? And there would be pros and cons around that. And I think we often tend to, as human beings, almost glorify our regrets and think if I had have made that decision, my life would be perfect. Like it wouldn't be perfect because there would have been other things that would have happened as a result. There would be good and bad things that would happen. Really interesting.
Absolutely.
Go either read it or listen to it. It really is
Yeah.
the most fantastic book. But
Yeah.
Caron, you mentioned something that I want to touch on as well, because it's something I know that I've suffered with, and it comes up so often when I have conversations with people, particularly with women. I don't know if I just talk to more women, and this is this notion of imposter syndrome. And I've seen it almost, like, people ruin their lives over it. And I know I have come close to doing serious damage to my career because of it. So how do you help people overcome this? What advice do you have? What tools do you have? Where can people kind of start to dig into this?
It's. I think we all suffer from it. Men probably do as well. I love the fact that you're saying, especially women. I've all of my life I've been very aware of the patriarchal society that we live in, the glass ceiling, all of that stuff. But I didn't think much about how it actually affects our lives. And it's only been in the last 2 years that I've been looking at various things. And I mean, I was doing some research the other day, and they were saying in the US Army, when they do appraisals for women, they will say compassionate, thoughtful, kind. They'll use words like that. When they do appraisals for men, the predominant words that come up are organized, strategic, task orientated. And so when you're now looking to promote somebody, who are you going to promote? What are we looking for? We live in a world where it's the bottom line that counts. And in another article, they were talking about the fact that we talk to baby boys and baby girls differently. So those are not things that men are putting on us. That's what we're doing. An example I always give is in my department, I was one of 3 managers, but I was the only woman. So I always arranged the tea. It never occurred to me to say, okay, guys, it's your turn. So it's not only it's everything about our culture that puts women in certain roles. And I think those roles are so important. We are nurturers. We are the collaborators. We are the glue that holds families together. And so I'm not saying we've got to break these things out. I'm saying we just spiral out in ways that work well for us. So and so little boys are taught you've got to be brave and you've got to beat your chest, and men have got to protect women. And let me tell you, when there's an intruder in the house, I want the man of the house to be going out first. It's very convoluted, and it's very much a conundrum. But women, just by our upbringing, we're taught to put other people first. So I know, and I can only really speak from personal experience. I always think that other people are smarter than me and that they know more than me, and that's a product of a million little things that happened when I was little. My daddy saying, "No, you don't know how to do that. Leave that." He didn't mean that for the rest of my life I mustn't do that and I don't know anything. But that little girl in me now goes, well, what if I don't know? Yeah. What if I get it wrong? Perfectionism is a huge problem with imposter syndrome as well. We believe that if we don't do it absolutely perfect, we're going to be judged horribly, and we will never recover from that. But think about the last time you saw somebody slip on the floor. Did you sit back and laugh and go, oh, what a klutz? Or did you go, oh my goodness, are you okay? Let me help you up.
Help them. Yes.
Yeah. And so we have this world in our head which says if you don't get it right, you're not good enough. And we have all these messages going on in our head. And when we start acknowledging those those messages and acknowledging what's going on in our heads, then we're able to start looking at it from a different perspective and say, well, how true is that? Byron Katie always says, is it true? Is it absolutely true? And it's never, ever absolutely true. But if you want to buy into the lie that it's true, you're always going to hold yourself down, hold yourself back, and make yourself small. Whereas when you can start looking at it with curiosity and just go, how true is this? Okay, so yes, I messed it up. I couldn't remember the very foundation of the work that I'm doing, and laugh about it. It's so much easier to help yourself to move forward. And imposter syndrome comes up in everything, in our family, in our work. I was doing dot art with some friends. It was a friend's birthday, and we were doing dot art on records. And I was sitting there, and in my head, I'm going, "Oh my goodness, I'm never going to get this right. It's not going to look as pretty." But I just kept those thoughts in my head. There was somebody sitting next to me who was going, "I'm doing this, and it's just not working. No, this isn't right. I'm starting again." So what I was doing internally, she was doing externally. But both of us were dealing with imposter syndrome, that what we were going to do would not be good enough. And when you start recognizing that it's a perennial thing, it's going to be there forever, but start getting strategies to rise above it, like acknowledging what it is and recognizing where you're doing it, doing a little bit of work about where it might have come from, not to assign blame, but to create more choices for yourself. You can start spiraling up a little bit and rising above it and going where you want to go and getting the things that you want to get.
I love that.
Clarity you need for the life that you really want.
Yes, exactly. I love that expression. I'm going to keep using it. But one of the things that I've found, and it may not be ideal, has worked. I mean, yes, you have to do the deep work that you're talking about. But in those moments where it's, I can feel that imposter syndrome coming on, I almost externalize it. And I think to myself, who is a person that I really, really admire from a work perspective. So, for example, my friend Alex, it's like, if Alex believes in me, I need to believe in me. Because this person who I really respect and really admire, I think she's really smart. She's just like, from a work perspective, she's really on, that's what I aspire to be. She believes in me. And she's not stupid. So I've got to believe in me. And looking at it from that, just taking it outside myself until I can believe in me, because she does, I can. And I found that's one of my little hacks when it happens in that moment. And it's like, okay, cool. This one believes in me. So my friend invited me to come and do dot art. So she must believe in me, so I must believe in me.
Absolutely. I love that hack. And also just you stopped and you're recognizing when imposter syndrome is coming in. Just recognizing when it's happening is half of the problem solved. Because as soon as you've got that, you can recognize it, you can do something different. And your something different is, okay, if she believes in me, I can strut my stuff too. And that's amazing.
So you need to have these little people in place for all the different moments, for your creative self, for your Caron, I want to touch on something just in the last few minutes, and this is getting back to the very brief conversation that you and I had on LinkedIn about micromanagement. And just to contextualize this for those of you who are watching or listening, what happened was somebody put a post up about the damaging effects of micromanagement and how it affects people's performance. And I commented that I think micromanagement, I have very firm opinions about this. It is obviously based on my experience. Is it true? Micromanagement is bullying. It's another form of this. It breaks people. And Caron, I'd like to hear your opinion and what your feedback was on that comment of mine, and just chat a little bit about this topic, because it is something that I mean, you raised a very interesting perspective which I had never thought of, but it's also something not unlike imposter syndrome that I have heard so many people talk about and face this issue. And I think maybe if they can just gain a little bit more clarity around where this comes from, it might help a lot of people deal with it.
Okay. First of all, I just want to preface this with the fact that I don't ever want to negate the way that you felt when you were being micromanaged, and the fact that it can be perceived as bullying, and it can feel horribly, horribly oppressive.
Thank you for that.
But yeah, it's because being on the receiving end of it is really, really hard, especially if you can't manage that person. But when you look at somebody who is doing the micromanaging, what's their aim? If you think about it, you're in this situation, you've got this person who's bearing down on your head. What are they trying to achieve? And so my approach, and it works in many situations, not just in a micromanaging situation, where something is really not sitting right with me, that I feel this is wrong and it's offensive or hurtful, is to say, okay, well, what were they trying to achieve? Why is it so important to them that this gets done? And again, it's just a situation. There is work that needs to be done. You might try and get it done by pulling in 3 or 4 people. They have a relatively limited perspective, and it has to be done. It has to be done this way. It can't be done any other way, and you must do it on my timetable and to my specifications. And so it's a product of what's going on in their mind, and the fear and the panic that is in that person's mind if that doesn't get done, in terms of their reputation, in terms of their ability to meet deadlines and stuff like that, is it helps me to look at them like that with compassion and say, you know what, I understand that this is important to you, but I feel really sorry for you as well, because I know the turmoil and the pressure and the stress that you're putting on yourself. And for me, that's a way that I've been able to deal with it. I don't know if you want me, if there was anything else that I mentioned that particularly stuck out for you.
No, I think it was more just when you're in these situations, it becomes very easy to look at it almost from a victim point of view. And what I loved about what you said was I had, for starters, never considered it from the other side. As much as we think we do, we actually don't. And looked at this and gone, hang on, what is this person trying to achieve? And I mean, you used the word fear now, and in your comment, which I loved, is I'd never actually thought, hang on, what fear are they dealing with that is resulting in this situation, and what pressure are they being put under? Whether that pressure is real or imagined is completely irrelevant. That's not, I don't have any control over that. But it was just, and I suppose this relates to so many things, it was just actually what the questions that you asked and the comments that you made caused me to step out of myself and go, hang on a minute, this is, if I just try, because obviously I can't get into their heads, but try and look at it from a slightly different perspective. And that is what, I mean, that's the whole point of why I do these interviews, is to actually get people to look at different things, whether it's the war in the Ukraine or office politics or getting clarity on your life and micromanagement. Just look at it from a different perspective and how that changes our view, or certainly my viewpoint on a situation. And it made me realize that there was a lot of other things going on which were contributing factors, but this was actually just one of them. And what actually happens when we step out of ourselves, possibly out of our victimhood, and look at things from a different perspective. And that was what I loved about what you said.
Yeah. Oh well, you know what? I'm glad it resonated and it was useful. I love well, not so much love, but your use of the word victimhood within that situation is very interesting. Just purely because we can very easily step into the victim role, and it's only when we step out of that victim role that we can start putting boundaries in with whoever that is, and start, and so we stand in our own power first, and then we're able to put the boundaries in. And so yeah, it's interesting that you use that word. For me, recently I've I've been thinking about victimhood and standing in victory, and we have so many examples of that going on. One day I'm going to save South Africa. I'm going to fix our early childhood education system. I'm going to make kids at school think about how the economy works and how stealing money steals from the poorest of the poor. And one of the things that I want to do as well is get South Africans to start thinking about when I play the victim and when I play the victor. So if I'm a victim, and so people will say, I have to steal because I don't have a job and I can't look after my family. But what if they said, I don't have a job and I can't look after my family, and there are institutions out there who I can go to for help. They were talking about people standing at a robot begging, and you know, am I? What do I do differently to? And somebody said, "Well, give to a charity." So we can sit and say, "I'm a victim of South Africa because I don't." There's so many people begging, or you can say, I will be a victor and I will contribute because I'm able to an organization that will help those people, and then I will put that person at the robot in touch with that place. Children at school, I cannot imagine what it must be like to be a child in a more rural school who's thinking there's children in cities who have much better education, they have so many more resources, etc. So they could be a victim and say, I have nothing and I'm going to be nothing. Or they can say, I'm going to be a victor. What can I learn that will help me to get that? And so I want to change the psyche of the whole of South Africa. But if we just start with ourselves, I think it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. It's a great goal. It's a lofty one. It's going to be hard, but I wish you all the best. One step at a time. Exactly. Eating. How do you eat an elephant?
Yes, exactly.
Caron, it has been such a pleasure chatting to you, and I've had so many wow moments for myself, and it's really been very interesting. And do you have any final thoughts or anything, sort of last things that you would like to leave us with?
Well, thank you very much for all the topics that you've given me an opportunity to chat about and the insights that you've given us. I think the one big thing that I would like to sort of leave the audience with is be aware of when that imposter syndrome is striking, because it's in all of us. And then use Nicci's hack if you need to just to get the courage that you need. You've got the dream, you've decided what you want. That courage might just be somebody else believes in me, and then go ahead and act on it. So, and just remember your power. You have immense power. You are making a huge difference in the lives of so many people who are just in your circle. So acknowledge that power as a woman, acknowledge your strength and the skills. Yes, you're imperfect, but that's okay. That's how those people love you. So I love what you said about that, Nicci, and I'm going to carry it with me forward.
Thank you. And I love that your comment about people loving your imperfections. They would make you. Caron, thank you so much for your time. It really has been wonderful chatting to you. Thank you to all of you who joined us live. Just to give you a quick, Steve Mwale, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, says this has been a lovely conversation. I'm going to go through this and post it again. So thanks very much, Steve. I'm so glad you found it useful. Thank you to all of us who have joined us live, and thank you if you are listening to this afterwards. If you are interested in getting these recordings, please just join my mailing list. I will pop the link in the comments. And if you do want to get in touch with Caron, you can reach out to her. Caron, is LinkedIn the best place to get hold of you?
LinkedIn's definitely the best place to get hold of me. Yeah, Caron Cloete, and then you'll find me there and we'll have a chat.
Excellent. And really get in touch with her because she does post some really fantastic stuff. So thanks very much, everybody. So be a victor, not a victim. And I will be in touch with you next week on my show on, well, Nicci Chats too. And yeah, thanks very much. Stay safe, stay warm if you're in Joburg because it's been really cold. And have a wonderful week and happy Easter for those of you who celebrate it. So thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Hey, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.